Okay, now in this video, I'm going to show you what you're going to do with the links that I'm going to provide to you. So the two links I'm going to provide to you are the link is to the Google form that I just showed you in the previous video, and also the spreadsheet that's going to be sort of connected to it. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So initially what's going to happen is you're going to click on those links or paste them in, and you are going to make a copy of the Google form. So the nice thing about that, oh, that's for the spreadsheet. Let me go back here too, make a copy of that. So both of these are going to look very similar in terms of forcing you to make a copy of each. Okay, all right. So now we have a copy of student visitation to school form right here. What I want you to do is, because this is now yours to use, you can now rename this however you like. So we can just say student visitation to, let's say, fake school. So it could be like, let's say, if it's a high school, like FFSS or HHSS, whatever you want to do. Doesn't really matter to me. It's your form. Student visitation to school. Again, you can rename the title. This is more for you. This was just my template, like, this is what it's all about. You, of course, can redo the description here. So what I really want to get to the crutch of all of this is actually how to set up that question that had that elimination process where you meet the maximum capacity. How does that work? All right, so what's important is that you do collect some information, of course, but this here is actually populated using an add-on called formRanger. So there's a few things I need to do here. So first things first, I'm going to open up my responses tab. So I want to set the stage for what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to click on responses, and you'll see that there has to be a spreadsheet. We need that spreadsheet. This is really important. So I'm going to click on the spreadsheet. I'm going to create a new spreadsheet. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call this maybe master, just to distinguish between master and the copy of the other spreadsheet I shared with you. So I'm going to click create. Perfect. So what happens is that automatically it takes the headings from my Google form. And of course, if you change this here, so back to the questions, if you change it so it wasn't Monday, June 8th, let's say it was a later date, maybe it was Wednesday, June 10th, whatever you want, or different time slots. The time slots aren't going to matter at the moment. What really matters is just really kind of what is the question you're asking, what date. Okay, so I've got that. What I need to do now is create, so I'm going to just hide that. I'm going to create a new worksheet down here. To do that, I'm going to click on the plus sign, and I'm going to double click and rename this as to choices. Excellent. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the copy. So this is where it's important, where I'm distinguishing between the two forms that I have here. So this is the spreadsheet that's connected right now to the form that you are working on. And this is the one I'm giving you a copy of. And you can see here why it looks very similar, because it was obviously based off of my template that I gave you. And I already created this workplace called choices. So in this one, what I have is I have the time slots listed. I have a column also called formRanger time. I just called it that to distinguish, and you'll see in a moment why I did that, between the time slots that I just want to use and the time slots that will be visible. Capacity, this can of course change. You can change it so let's say maybe 10 people can go in at each time slot, and you can actually vary it by time slot. So let's say you don't have a lot of staff in the afternoon that's helping to support the volume of people that might be in the building. So you may want to reduce this down to, let's say, 10 or 5 slots. Completely up to you. Now, what's going to happen is that we have a formula here for the number of registered people and number of spots available. So let me back up. Under the time slots, I have 9 a.m. Perfect. Just leave it as is. What I have here is a formula, and what it's basically saying is that, hey, if the content here in D2, so if I look here, it says D2 is less than my value of C2, then you're going to display what is in A2, which is the time slot. Excellent. So what I'm going to do here, though, otherwise, if that's not the case, if this doesn't meet that requirement, then it's going to be blank. So this is the whole idea, is where we're not going to actually see that time slot if it doesn't meet the rule of D2 being less than C2. Okay, so already you might be thinking, I have no idea what she's talking about and my head already hurts. So let me just pause right here. All I need you to do is very simple. We're just going to grab this stuff. We're going to go, so shift, I'm just going to grab this section and just copy it. So right click copy or control C, however you want to do it. Go back to your master under my choices tab and control V or right click paste. So that way you don't have to think about all the formulas I've used here. It's simple. You just change what you need to change. So if you need to change your actual time slots, change your time slots. If you need to change your capacity, go for it. This is automatically all going to update based on the formulas that I've used. Now, the only thing you have to be careful with is if I go back to my form responses, let's say you chose to change this up a little bit where, for example, let's say I only have student name and you didn't want a first name and a last name. That would mean all my information for time slots would not populate under column D. It might be under column C. So where you have to be careful with that is, again, back to where we're looking at our values. So when we're looking to our first form. So this doesn't have our first form mentioned. This here does not have our first form mentioned, and here it does. So in this formula, it's basically counting, saying, hey, look back at my other tab back here at form response 1, and you're going to look at that for a number of people who've registered for the 9 o'clock slot. So you may see the reference I have is D here. That's very important because you're saying, hey, you need to look under this column to see what time slots have been selected here. So if it's no longer column D, very simple. Just back in your choices here, you're just going to change it back to, let's say, whatever letter this is. Or if you added more questions initially, then you, of course, you change it from D, let's say, to column E or column F, whichever it is. Okay, let's go back now to our form. So right now, because I did a copy of the other one, it looks almost identical. I haven't made any changes. As I just mentioned, you can make changes. And if you get lost or if things get a little too confusing, you can just let me know. This is where I'm now going to call in my formRanger. And just to keep things simple, I'm going to get rid of this copy. Because now you have your master. You've done what you need to do. I'm going to now go to these add-ons and formRanger. If I don't have it installed, which you can see, I do not have it installed. So I'm going to click install, and most of you most likely do not have it installed either. So I'm going to quickly go through this process, and I purposely did this with this account so that I could replicate what you're most likely going to go through. Yeah, we'll just give it a moment. Okay, so let's try that again. formRanger, start. And it's now working the back end. It's going to look for a question where it could work. Hey, which question makes the most sense where formRanger would be helpful? It automatically picked up my Monday question. Excellent. So what it's basically asking is, hey, what choices do you even want here? So this is pretty sweet because I could have had this all blank, and I'm going to have it actually pull my responses here. Like, what ones do I want to be visibly available here on this form? So I'm going to populate from a range, and you're going to select a new range. And what's going to happen is, you see, again, my naming convention, I want to be very clear. I want to make sure I'm not getting mixed up with any other spreadsheets. Master is the spreadsheet I want. Now the range. Now be very careful. The first tab, if you recall, was the form responses. But where I did all the snazzy type calculation stuff was actually the choices tab. Okay. So now it's going to look at all my column headers. I don't want the column header to be the first one. I actually specifically want the formRanger times because this is the one that's either going to be displayed or not displayed based on my formula. back to that D2 less than C2 scenario. So formRanger times. Click next. You can name this whatever you want. I'm going to just call this formRanger options, something like that. Save and populate. Let it do its magic. And now the last thing is really important that you turn on before you're done is on form submit. So I need to click that so that every time somebody clicks submit on their Google form, that now it's going to automatically kick in my formRanger. It's like, hey, are we up to that value again? So it keeps checking every time the form's submitted. And then when you reach that maximum, as I showed you earlier, it's no longer going to show that time slot. So I'm going to do that. I can even update question list just to make sure it's all good to go. And just minimize that and you're ready. So all you have to do now is you just have to send out the form. You can, of course, do just like any other Google form. You can take a look at all the things, how you want to be. Do you want to be restricted to users in TLDSB? If you're asking for parent submission, you probably will want to uncheck that. Maybe you want to limit to one response. So rather than having that link like I had in my demo where you can submit another response, that may be something you want to do. You can, of course, even under presentation, say your response has been recorded. You can say, thank you very much for submitting time to visit our school. And this is where you can decide what's the next steps. Is an administrator going to reach back to that parent or student to confirm their time slot? Or do you want to even just say in this confirmation message, we will see you on Monday, June 8th at the time you selected. Okay, and I can say, from the administrator or whatever you want. Okay, save. And again, send back to, I can just grab this URL. I can shorten the URL. And this is what you can send out. You send it out to parents, send it out to students, however you want to do it. Send it by email, and you're good to go. You may want to test your form. That's completely up to you as well. If you want to test your form, I just be cautious of eliminating things, deleting things, and so on. So I think as I'm saying this out loud, what I'm going to do is create a third video to do your testing of your form to see if you're good to go. All right, so I'm going to stop this video and then I'll create another one in just a moment.